I literally want to cry. So if you didn't know, I have a sister and her name's Ashley. And we both have boyfriends. And every night we both fall asleep on the phone with our boyfriends. So one day we're all hanging out and we're like just talking. And my sister's boyfriend looks at me and he's like, "You need to stop going into your sister's room in the middle of the night." And I look at him and I'm like, "What are you talking about? I don't have a reason to go into her room. Like I don't go into her room, especially in the middle of the night." Then my boyfriend hops in the conversation and he's like, No. He's like, "No, I hear Ashley go into Kayla's room every night and stare at her." So me and my sister both look at each other and we're like, we don't go into each other's rooms, do we? And we agreed that we do not. And they said this has been going on for months. So for months, somebody or something has been going into me and my sister's room for about 15 minutes every night and watching us sleep. But it only gets worse.
This is why you need to watch out for the shy ones. I'm European, and when I was 16, I attended a Catholic high school in the States. All of it was new to me, and I felt like I was in a teen movie sometimes. Another new thing to me was having to change classes every hour. Where I'm from, you sit 5 hours at the same desk with the same people nearby, and just the professors alternate every hour. I sat next to this guy named Mark in my English class. He was nice and friendly despite being introverted. It amazed me that whenever I talked to him, he never looked me in the eye. He would always look around or at the ground, often moving his eyes quickly. I assumed it was a way to combat his shyness. One morning, I sit next to Mark as usual and start talking. I asked him if I could copy his homework as I didn't finish the last part of mine, and he kindly accepted. The next day, I noticed that Mark is absent. A few days go by and rumors start circulating in the hallways that poor Mark, on his way home, found his mother dead. 2 weeks pass and the rumors start getting out of hand. Things like how his mother's head was in the oven or that she was robbed. Then one day, Mark came back to school and he seemed extremely sad. I put my arm around him in class and told him I'm sorry. This is when, for the first time ever, he looked me straight in the eye and thanked me. However, something about this was off. Part 2 of why you should watch out for the shy ones. When Mark looked me in the eyes, something was different. There was a darkness in his eyes that gave me the goosebumps. He was deeply sad, but it wasn't sadness. It was almost like despair. I thought to myself that he's just grieving, and if I were in his situation, I don't think I'd ever recover, so I respectfully left it at that. The next day, Mark was absent again. This is when a man starts hanging around the cafeteria during lunchtime. When I ask who he is, they tell me it's the counselor's husband. The rumors around the school kept getting worse, and they were making me angry. Another week goes by, and the atmosphere at the school literally turned to ice. The principal called all seniors to the gym for an announcement. This is when I see that same man that's been hanging around, and he tells us the shocking news. Mark killed his mother by choking her. I felt the blood in my veins freeze. This man continues to tell us that he's actually a detective and was conducting investigations at the school. Apparently one morning, Mark had asked his mother for the car keys. She refused to give them to him because she needed them. That's when he jumped on her and strangled her. Then he came to school, sat next to me, and gave me his English homework as if that was the main problem of the day. He then went home and called the police later that day. Every now and then I think about Mark's empty eyes staring back at me.
I work as an assistant for a really big fashion company. I had a defective wedding dress and my boss asked if I knew anyone we could give it to. My best friend recently got engaged, so it was perfect. When she posted on Instagram to thank me and my boss, my family caught wind of it, and that's when the influx of calls came. I do not have a good relationship with my family. My parents kicked me out when I was 16 after I came out to them, and my sister wasn't much better. They demanded to know why I gave the dress to my friend and not to my sister. I didn't even know she was engaged. They suggested I try to take it back from my friend as family should always come first. My sister even tried to call my boss to complain. I just got off the phone with my mom and this is how the conversation went. She says my sister is very upset about the dress and I told her she needs to get over it. My mom says I can make it up to them by giving her another dress. I posted one last night on my Instagram. It's a $12,000 dress and that's the one my sister wants. And I told her, you expect me to give you a $12,000 dress when you kicked me out when I was 16? My mom says, that was a long time ago and we're talking about your sister, not me. When I refused to give the dress, my mom says the least I can do is help her buy one. At this point I hang up and I've been avoiding them since then.
This is a story of the time that I got followed home from work. So I was a waitress and my shift was from 12 in the afternoon until like 2 a.m. And that was pretty typical on a Friday or Saturday. So I was really busy throughout my entire shift. I was running back and forth, but I did notice this guy sitting at the bar. And the reason why I noticed him is because the section that my boss put me at to take tables was literally right next to where he was sitting at the bar. Not to mention that he was literally staring at me up and down. And I wasn't really that worried because that would happen kind of a lot. Like, people go to the bar, they get drunk, they stare at you, they try to talk to you. It's kind of like a usual thing at a restaurant. At least in my working experience, I don't know. But anyway, by the time my shift was over, he was still there. So I was walking out to my car and I had my boyfriend on speakerphone. And all I hear is, "Excuse me, miss," like, "excuse me." And I turn around and it's the guy from the bar holding his receipt and a pen. And he was like, "I couldn't help but notice you, but I thought you were so beautiful. I was wondering if I can get your number." And you hear my boyfriend on speakerphone like, "Who is that?" Not enough time, like, for part.
This is part 2 of being followed home from work. I want to give you guys an image of what this guy looks like, because based off his looks, I was not expecting him to be a creep. He looked like he could have been in his mid-20s, maybe even early 30s. He was over 6 feet tall, covered in tattoos, and overall a pretty attractive guy. So that's why I really wasn't expecting this to happen. So after he asked me for my number, I was like, "No, I have a boyfriend. I'm actually on the phone with him right now." And he was like, "Oh, okay, that's all right," and gave me like a really weird, awkward side hug. I pulled away because I obviously wasn't expecting that from a complete stranger. So then I go in my car and I kind of look through my rearview mirror to see where he was like walking to, and he walked into his car. And I sat in my car for about 15 minutes. I didn't really think anything of it once I saw him get in his car because I figured he was going to leave right away. Then when I was about to leave, I look in my rearview mirror again, and there he was sitting in his car. So I started backing out of my parking spot, and the second I did, he did too. And I was like, "Oh, hell no." So then I went back in my parking spot, and he went to like the first stop sign before you leave the restaurant. And then he waited for me to get behind him to go on the main road, like for part 3. This is part 3 of the time I got followed home from work. So he waited for me to pull out of my spot to leave the parking lot. And when he finally left the parking lot, I waited at that first stop sign for a while because I was like, that was kind of weird. I wonder if he's like waiting for me by the main road. So I gave it like a few minutes just to see if he really was waiting for me. And he was. So then I get on the main road and I was going probably like 25 miles an hour in a 55 because I was not trying to have him get behind me and follow me. So basically, the slower he was going, the slower I was going because I did not want him getting behind me. So finally, he hits a U-turn, so I figured he was going to go on the opposite way of the highway, aka the opposite direction that I was going. So then I started to speed up. But instead of going left to go on the opposite side of the highway, he turns right so that he can get behind me. And so at this point, I call my boyfriend again and I start freaking out and I'm like, "You need to get in your car and follow me right now because I'm terrified." So then I wait for my boyfriend in a plaza and the guy follows me in the plaza but then sees my boyfriend and leaves.
Storytime about why my mom kicked me out when I was 16. So a little background information. This had all started as soon as my dad left my mom and I. I was like 13 around the time. Well, ever since then, my mom would have different guys in and out of the house all the time. Like, we were lucky if a month went by and she was still with the same dude. Which, I mean, I kind of get it because my dad did leave us for a woman that he had started another family with. But at the same time, it was just a whole mess. Anyway, so she had got with this new guy and we're gonna call him Tyler. And by the way, the dudes that she would date, they would literally live at our house. Anyway, so a week after he moved in, I started getting really close to him, which usually never happens. Usually I would try to keep my distance because I knew how wrong it was of her having all these different guys in the house when I'm only 16. Anyways, every time that my mom would go to work, he would invite me to go see a movie and he would just be really flirty with me. And he was only 6 years older than me, and my mom was 32. You do the math. Anyways, like for part 2. Part 2 about why my mom kicked me out when I was 16. So like I said, the guy was being super flirty with me, inviting me to the movies when my mom wasn't home and all that stuff. Well, then it led to more than just that. By the way, this guy did not have a job, so he was home with me 24/7. And I was doing online school. So we were in the house by ourselves, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. Anyways, like I said, it led to more and we started doing the nasty and stuff. Ew, just, yeah. Well, the one day after we got done doing the nasty in my mom's room, we had fell asleep. And yes, we did not have clothes on. Well, at 2 in the morning, I hear someone pounding on the bedroom door. And my mom worked night shifts. So we get up, he hurries up and gets dressed and tells me to hide under the bed. And he opens the door and it's my mom's sister. My sister literally lived in the apartment next door. And she was like, "Oh yeah, neither of you were answering the phone, so she wanted me to check on you guys. Like, where's Elena?" And I'm still under the bed naked, like for part 3. Part 3 about why my mom kicked me out when I was 16. So like I said, I'm laying under the bed, no clothes on. She asks where I am. And he's like, "Oh, she should be in her room." So he goes looking for me everywhere with her. And he's like, "Oh, well, maybe she's outside on the patio." And I don't know why the hell my mom's sister had a key to our apartment anyways. But she's still looking for me in the apartment and she looks under the fucking bed. And at first she's like, oh my God, what did he do to you? And I'm trying to tell her nothing, like I made that decision on my own. So she calls my mom right away. My mom comes home, she's screaming at me, and she kicks me out. So I go to my grandma's house, and I told my grandma what happened. And my grandma calls her, and she's like, it's not her fault that you gave her daddy issues. And I'm like, bruh, what the fuck? Child, anyways. So then she goes on Facebook and starts posting about how I'm a whore and a slut and how, like, it isn't her boyfriend's fault at all. So now I live with my grandma.